In this video, I'm going to be sharing with you Gracie's challenging behaviors. Terrible tantrum. She hits, she bites, breaks people's glasses, and she does quite a lot of things that... Hi everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name is Esther and I'm happy to have you back on this channel. Today I'm going to be talking on autism and their behavior, and I'm going to be sharing my experience of Gracie's behavior and how I managed to deal with those challenging behavior. The challenging behaviors of children, teenagers, or maybe young adults of children with autism often causes parents and families, even the carers, a lot of stress. And sometimes the first steps of dealing with these challenges is to actually look at the causes of these behaviors. We need to look at what actually triggers those behavior in them. I'm sure you will agree with me that all children behave in a challenging ways. And most importantly, if these children have autism spectrum disorder, their behavior can be very challenging. And when that happens, it can cause us a lot of stress and it can be very challenging in managing. Gracie, growing up, has displayed a lot of challenging behaviors. And initially, I was confused. I didn't know how to deal with those behaviors because I didn't have anyone to turn to. I didn't have anyone to share their experience or the ways they had dealt with such behaviors with me. So I had to find a way of dealing with these behaviors myself. Growing up and dealing with Gracie's challenging behavior has always been, to me, trial and error. I'll have to try what works for Gracie and see what doesn't work for Gracie. And this is going to be my suggestions to anyone out there with children with autism, that when your children start to behave in a challenging manner, most of the time no one has an answer to these behaviors. But one thing I will advise is you will try what works for your child, because what works for your child might not equally be what works for my child. So I'm going to be sharing with you some of the ways that I dealt with Gracie's behaviors, and you can try this, you can try my ways and see if it would work for you. But if it doesn't work for you, try another way, because these ways and this advice or this suggestion, it is something that you will have to try and see if it will work for your child or not. The first thing I will advise is, when your child starts to behave in a challenging ways, you have to think of what are the causes. You need to look at what you can do to manage it. Also, you need to look at what could have been the cause of this particular behavior. Also, you have to think, why does my child behave in a challenging way? We want to look at some causes of why they behave in challenging ways. The first thing I would say is sometimes it's because of their communication. Because they cannot communicate, or they cannot understand ways of communicating with them, sometimes this causes them to behave badly. Gracie is non-verbal. She doesn't have any language whatsoever. And so therefore, communicating with Gracie is very challenging. And Gracie communicating with us also, it's very challenging. When Gracie was growing up, what we used to do was suspect what she wanted, and we would try one thing or the other to see if that was what she was trying to communicate. If they try to communicate something to you and you don't understand it, yes, this might trigger bad behavior in them. If these children do not have a specific way of communicating with you, their parents, or with an adult, That could lead to frustration, and this could trigger bad behavior in these children as well. Sometimes these children are very anxious. They're anxious in the sense that they perhaps want to communicate with you, and they are anxious about the fact that you might not understand them, or sometimes they're anxious about their environment. And so because of that anxiety, that also could trigger bad behavior in them. There are some few triggers that I have noted down that caused bad behaviors in Gracie growing up. One of the things that I noticed always caused a problem with Gracie was if we change her routine. Gracie is so used to a particular routine that if that routine is changed in any way, that would trigger Gracie's bad behavior. I remember there was a time I picked Gracie up from respite and we were coming home, and I can't remember what happened with the route that I normally take. So I turned to use another route, and I didn't even think of explaining to Gracie that I was going to take a different route that day. But what happened was, suddenly while I was driving, Gracie just hit me so badly from the back. She was sitting at the back of the car, and she just leaned forward and she slapped me. It was so painful that tears started rolling down my face, and I had to park the car, and I looked at Gracie with tears in my eyes and said, "Gracie, why did you hit me?" And when I asked her and she saw that I was crying, I could see that she was remorse. She felt sorry, but she couldn't tell me she was sorry. And I felt sorry for her because I knew that there must have been one thing or the other that caused Gracie to hit me like that, even though I didn't actually understand the reason immediately. But while I was driving home, I was thinking about it. And when I got home, I was so hurt that I was just thinking, what could have happened? And then I suddenly remembered that I took a different route. So that was why Gracie got upset, and she couldn't ask me why. Where are you going? Why are you taking a different route? And she just suddenly hit me from behind to get my attention. Another thing about routine is they like to do the same thing every day. They have their routine, you know. Gracie has a certain time that she wakes up every morning. And when she gets up in the morning, the whole house needs to get up, because she's not just going to get up and sit down. She would get up and she would run around the house. So she has a particular time that she gets up in the morning. And when she gets up in the morning, she has a routine. The first thing she wants to do is she wants to brush her teeth and she wants to have a bath or a shower. If she doesn't have a shower in the morning, Gracie cannot start her day. Forget it. And until she's had a shower, nobody will be able to settle in the house. And then she has a breakfast, and then everything follows. Also, when you change things around the house, like they have a way things are set in the house. If there's a need for you to move things around in the house, I think you should do it when the kids are there. I mean, when these children are present. You can even try to do it together. If you move things around the house while they're not there, when they come back, I notice Gracie will not be settled. As soon as she steps through the door, she would look around and she will notice that something has moved. And Gracie will not rest until she's able to trace what has been moved from the house, and she will have to put that thing back to where it was when she left the house. I remember when Gracie was in a boarding school, when she was in school, we moved things around, we changed our furniture, and the bathroom, the whole house most practically was different from the way she left it. So when she came, she was confused. She stood at the door and she looked around, and Gracie was not settled until she went around and started to put things back to where they were before she left. And when she put everything back to where they were, that was the only time she was able to settle. And also, but before she came back from school, I had thrown out the dining table that was in the house with the mind that I was going to replace the dining table before she came back. But unfortunately, I was not able to buy a new dining table. Gracie was not able to eat. When you give her her meal, she would just be roaming around and looking like, where do you expect me to have my meal? And even if you try to get her to sit on a sofa and eat her food, she just could not. And the thing about Gracie is when she eats her food, she uses fork and knife. So she wants to sit down at the table and eat exactly what she does in school. So when she came and this was not the case, that triggered a terrible behavior in Gracie. So that is another reason that our children could be behaving badly. When we change their routes without explaining the reason to them, that triggers bad behavior in them. Another reason why they might behave badly could be if you do not have a transition for them from moving from one activity to another. Sometimes maybe I ask Gracie to come and help me. We were doing baking or we're doing something. If I don't tell her that, okay, now we're going to move from one activity to another, Gracie gets frustrated. She likes to do things properly. So I will need to explain, Gracie, we're going to transit from this to this. And then she will understand. And sometimes I used the pegs. But Gracie is now so used to not using pegs. She has a way of communicating with us and we understand her. So we hardly use the pegs. You only use the pegs when there is a completely new activity that we need to do with her. So if there's no transition, this might trigger bad behavior in your child. Another thing that could trigger a child's bad behavior is sensory. Children with autism love sensory. They like to feel things. And if you try to give them something that don't feel the way that they want, that could trigger bad behavior in them. Gracie does not wear anything sweater. She doesn't wear wool, she doesn't wear sweater, she hardly wears curtains. And if she must wear curtains, clothes with cottons, that is made with cottons, it would have to be very soft. Gracie only likes silky, smooth, lycra, soft fabrics on her skin. If at any time you try to put anything on her that is not of such feelings, she will not have it. She will push it off, and if you try to force her to put it on her, even while she's outside or in the car, she will take that clothes off. She would prefer to be naked than wear something that doesn't feel good on her skin. So if you know that your child loves a particular types of fabrics, please don't wear something that is not of that make for them. That would trigger terrible behavior in them. Another point that could trigger bad behavior is noise. Noise and crowd. Gracie does not like noise. And I'm sure majority of autistic children that I have met don't like noise. When they're in an environment that is noisy, you see them close their ears. They don't want to hear it. And when they close their ears, they're closing their ears is either they're rocking back and front, or they're jumping around, or they are just causing trouble. So they don't like any noisy environment. I remember when Gracie was younger than this, when we take her to a party, she would not go inside that hall if it's noisy. And if she goes in and they started to play the music, and if it's too noisy, she either blocks her ears or she runs out of the hall. And that would be the end of that party. Gracie doesn't like crowd either. She doesn't like lifts. Like you take her into a place that is crowded, claustrophobic. Gracie doesn't like it. And if you try to make them do it, you will trigger bad behavior in them. So what I do is, if I see that Gracie doesn't like to get in the lift, we have to go through the stairs. So you have to find a way of working with these children and their behavior and managing it to make sure that it suits them and that it suits you as well. Another point that can trigger this behavior in these children is high expectations. As parents, we have high expectations for them, and we try to get them to do activities or do something that they just don't want to do. It's either they don't want to do it or they cannot do it. And when you try to force them to do it, that is it. It triggers bad behavior in them. One thing I noticed is that when I try to get Gracie to say something, Gracie is not verbal, and sometimes I will try and ask Gracie to say yes or no, and I would see that she's trying to make that effort to bring out the words, but she just can't. And if I continue to force her or to try to make her say that word, sometimes she just hits me, and it's a way of leave me alone, I can't do it. So they get frustrated, and that triggers the bad behavior in them. So sometimes when we set high expectations for them and they cannot reach it, yes, they would go upset and they will start behaving badly. So when we set high expectations for them and we see that they're struggling with it, just give them time. Leave them for that time, walk away or do something else, and then come back to it. And when you come back to it, that might help them to now try to do that thing that you asked them to do. Another thing is tiredness. Sometimes you don't know that these kids get tired as well. And when they get tired, they're frustrated and they start to behave badly, especially when they're trying to sleep and they can't sleep. Because remember, these children, they cannot communicate their needs to us and they don't understand our world. So they're in their own world and they're thinking, I'm tired, I'm trying to sleep, I can't sleep. All we see is them displaying bad behavior, and we don't know why they are displaying this behavior. Sometimes this happens when Gracie comes back from school, or maybe when she's at home and she wants to take a nap. And I'm thinking, no, I don't want her to take this nap now, because once she takes the nap, it will be a problem for her to sleep at night. So I might try to distract her attention or take her out or do something. And rather than that helping, Gracie goes into tantrum, and that is it. She starts to display bad behavior. So sometimes when they're tired, they will start behaving badly. Another thing that I found with Gracie is discomfort. Sometimes she might be in pain, and because she cannot actually communicate that with us, that can start to make her to behave badly. And the thing about Gracie is, because she's non-verbal, it's difficult for her to let me know or to let anyone know when she's in pain. So we will have to work it out and see what and why and the reasons why she is behaving or she's crying and we don't understand. When Gracie is in discomfort, what she does is she cries. And when she starts crying, we start to think, okay, Gracie, what is it? And what I noticed is Gracie, when Gracie is on her period, she starts to feel this discomfort and she starts to hold her tummy. And when she starts holding her tummy, that means she's showing that our tummy is aching. We need to work out and see when these children are in pain or what could be the reason why they are behaving badly. Because many times I don't think there's a child that would just want to start behaving badly. There's always one thing or that triggers that bad behavior in them. Another thing that I found when Gracie was younger was the medication that she was on. I said I was going to share the name of that medication with you, but unfortunately I cannot remember. When Gracie was on that medication, Gracie would go into terrible tantrum. It took time for me to actually trace that behavior back to that medication. Whenever I gave her that medication, give her a few minutes, I just noticed that Gracie will start tearing the whole house apart. She will pull the curtains down, she will push the mirrors, she will just go crazy. And this medication was given to her to actually calm her down because she was on the ADHD side of things. She was very hyperactive growing up. So they gave me this medication to apply to her to calm her down. Rather than this medication calming Gracie down, it had a terrible side effect on Gracie. That medication triggers bad behavior in Gracie. Terrible behavior that it was just a slim space of time that Gracie would have killed her younger brother then, because whenever she's on this medication, she just loses it. And the only way we could manage that behavior at that time was 2 or 3 of us will have to hold her down. And the way we did it was, I will hold her down and we will have to try and push her to the floor, and I will lay on her to keep her down on the floor. There was no way one person could do that. And I didn't know that it was the medication that was causing this horrible behavior in my child. And when I found out and I stopped that medication, that was the end of that behavior. So please guys, you need to make sure that you check the medication your child is on. Even though the doctors prescribed that medication, it still was not working for Gracie. Rather than calming Gracie down, it set her off in a terrible way. So please guys, check the medication your child is on. That was the end of medication for Gracie. And Gracie was like about 8 years old at that time. And since then, I stopped to give Gracie medication, and that was it. And Gracie has never been on medication until now, and her behavior has been well managed. So most of the times, it's not about medication managing these children's behavior. We have to find a way of managing their behavior, and that would help rather than putting them on medication. Another medication that Gracie was put on was melatonin. Melatonin, something to make her to sleep, because she really struggled with sleep. But I will be taking sleep in another video to share my experience with Gracie's sleep and how I managed her sleep. It was very difficult. Gracie and sleep were not friends growing up. It was a difficult, challenging part of our lives. I will be sharing that with you in another video. So guys, look out for that. Now you know what triggers that bad behavior in your child, and then look at what triggers it and look at what you do once they start behaving badly, and then start taking a log. So whatever behavior they're displaying, maybe they're jumping around, rolling on the floor, tearing things apart, banging their heads on the wall, because Gracie used to do that. When Gracie was upset, rather than hitting when she was younger, rather than hitting, she will hit her own head on the wall. It was a horrible situation for me, because I used to cry. I would be crying and Gracie would be crying, because I was like, how can a child be hitting their heads on the wall and they're not feeling the pain? So rather than her feeling the pain, I was the one feeling the pain and I was the one crying. So it was a very difficult time. When they start behaving badly, like banging their heads on the wall, think about what triggers it. Take a log. And also when they start behaving badly, what do you do? How did you deal with it? How do you manage it? Take a log. How do you manage this behavior? What I did was I looked at what triggers that behavior, and then I try to move them away. Also, what do you do? Gracie's Gracie loves reaction. When she behaves in a certain way and everyone reacts, she loves it. And then she continues to behave in such manner. You know, like sometimes maybe she does something and everybody says, hey! Or, you know, some reaction. Gracie loves it. And then she will continue to go on and on and on about it. Gracie will yank anybody's glasses from their face. She was doing it at school. She was doing it at church. She would yank their glasses off their face. And you know what she would do? She would break it into two. Gracie would take somebody else's glasses and breaks it into two. And she looks at the reactions that everybody gives. And she loved it. And she kept yanking people's glasses. It could be on the streets. It could be at church. Sometimes you might not even think of it. It could be someone coming home to visit us. She will yank their glasses and she will break the glasses immediately into two. And how did we manage this? The school had to write a story of what happens when Gracie takes people's glasses and breaks. So they initially wrote a story about the fact that we need these glasses for us to see. It's not just there because it has to be there. Because maybe she's thinking that she doesn't have glasses. How come these people are wearing glasses? We even tried to buy her own sunglasses for her. She will still take them off and break those glasses. So when this storybook was written, I made sure that I read it to her all the time. I make her know that people wear glasses because they need to be able to see, and when they don't have their glasses on, they can't see, and then they bang their heads on the wall. And what happens when you take their glasses, and breaks it, they start to cry, and then they feel sad. When we read this to Gracie, that helped Gracie, and now she doesn't do that anymore. Now she respects glasses. Now she can see people wear glasses. She will look at it and she will leave them alone. So what you need to do is look at what triggers their bad behavior and see what you can do to manage this behavior in them. Another way you can manage their behavior is take a behavior one at a time and manage them one at a time. When Gracie hits me in the car, I learned my lesson not to change a routine without letting her know. We might think these children don't understand, and lots of times, and many times, we cheat Gracie. We cheat Gracie in the sense that we just assume that she doesn't know what is going on around us, and we make decisions for her. And these are the things that make them to think, come on, you can't just make decisions for me, and that would trigger their bad behavior. So we need to understand that they understand what is happening around them and they want to be included. So I learned my lesson from that time that if I pick Gracie up from school or from respite or from play center, and I need to go to Tesco to do some shopping, or I need to go and visit someone, or we need to do something, I will need to tell her. As soon as she gets in the car, I said, Gracie, we're going to go to Tesco. I need to buy some groceries. And then once I explain that to her, then she knows that we're not going straight home and we're branching somewhere else. So rather than just assuming that they would understand, please explain to them what you're doing, and that would help them to understand what next you're doing and feel included in whatever you are doing for that day. So another way you can manage their behavior is communicate what you're doing to them before doing it. Don't do it and then start explaining. Communicate with them, let them know that we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this. We have not been going to church because of the lockdown and the coronavirus. I had to speak to Gracie and let Gracie know that we're not going to church because of what is going on out there. It is dangerous for us to go out and go to church, and because there's nobody at church, so that's why we're not going to church. When we watch the service on the TV, I always make sure that I get Gracie to sit down and say, Gracie, look, the service is going on and this is church. Because they don't understand. She just wants to get up like on Sunday, because she knows Monday to Friday she goes to school, Saturday she knows is we stay at home, and Sunday she wants to wake up, get ready and go to church. So, and now that we're not going to church, what's going on? So we need to explain. So that's what I did. I told her, I said, we're not going to church for now, and we're going to be having our services at home. And that made her to understand that, okay, everybody is staying at home. And once the service starts on the TV, she knows that we sit down and we watch the service. Another way you can manage behavior is let them communicate with you via either PEGs or sign language, marketing, or any other way that they have been taught at school to communicate. Once you understand the way they communicate, it will reduce their challenging behavior greatly. So make sure that you communicate with them, use their pegs, until you are able to understand each other. Now, when Gracie looks at me in a certain way at a certain time, I know, I understand what she wants. Even though sometimes I still want her to communicate that with me, and she will sign, she does some marketing, but I understand what her needs are now. So I would follow, and I will help, and I will support, and I will do whatever she wants to do. So that has reduced challenging behavior in Gracie. Gracie has improved in a tremendous way, behavioral wise. She has improved. She is, honestly, we hardly have tantrums these days, because she understands us, we understand her, and we know what her needs are. But it was not so when she was growing up. The reason being that I didn't know what I know now. So I struggled with Gracie's behavior. And this is the reason I'm sharing this with you, that you need to understand what triggers. You need to nip their behavior in the bud. You need to manage their behavior as early as possible for your own sake and for the sake of the child. You don't want to continually deal with frustrated child. Another thing you can do is, when they are in that mood of bad behavior, and doing things that they're not supposed to do, and you've told them not to do it, just ignore them. Because like I said, Gracie loved the attention and she loved the reactions, and she continued to do it because she wanted to see that reaction. So another way you can deal with it is ignore them. As long as they're not killing themselves, they're not hurting themselves, they're not hurting anybody, they're not putting anybody or themselves in any danger, just ignore them and let them get on with it. And when they realize that, oops, she doesn't care, she's not even looking at me, they will stop. That is what they do. Even children without autism do that. They do things because they want to see our reaction. And when we don't react the way they want us to react, they stop behaving badly. So that applies to these children as well. When they start to behave badly, just ignore them as long as they are safe, and you will see that they will stop. Another thing that I do is, when Gracie behaves really well, I give her a lot of praises. So when they start behaving well, when they do anything that is really good, give them a lot of praises. When they do something that is not good, obviously you would say, no, that's not good, and give them that sad face. And when they behave well, yes, well done. Give them a lot of praises. They love it. When I give Gracie lots of praises, I see her give me that smile. She gives me that smile of approval. It works for Gracie, and I'm sure if you try that, it will work for you. So all these are suggestions, and they're not written on a stone. You will have to try and see if these will work for you. These are the things that I would like to share with you. If you have any ways that you have been managing your child's behavior, please share them with me in the comment box. Also, if there are some behaviors that I have not touched on that your child has displayed or displaying, please share with us and let us know how you have managed those behaviors as well. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate your support. If you have not subscribed, don't forget to press that subscription button and the notification bell and be part of this family. So I will see you in my next video. Until then, take care. God bless. Bye bye.